It's football factory, man.
All right. Well, let's get into some Ohio State football talk. We got Austin Ward with Lettermen Road joining us. Austin, welcome in, sir. How are you?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good. I appreciate your time. So let's rewind all the way back to the Fiesta Bowl. The clock hit 0. Clemson beats Ohio State. Did you really think that you were going to have to wait all the way to pretty much the end of October before you got to watch your next Buckeye game?
No, I certainly did not. And even March 13th or 15th or whatever it was, everything seemed normal. And we were going to go through a normal spring camp, and then the world stopped, as we all know. And one of the first things to go here was the spring game, and that's when you realized that, I don't know that anybody even thought then that there'd be significant delays, but you did know that the chance of football not being played was real at that point, when those steps were being taken and people weren't even allowed to practice. So I think it's, we went through some interesting spells there in August and September where it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and now they found a way. And I think that, as you said off the top there, Justin, thank goodness they did, that we can all enjoy a little bit of normalcy, even if it's going to be very different than other years.
And you talk about how it's going to be different. On Saturday, noon kickoff, Nebraska, little to no fans. I think it's like limited capacity with like a family of players, correct? What set the scene? What's it going to look like when fans tune into the game on Saturday? What is this game going to look like and sound like? No band either.
Yeah, no band, no cheerleaders, no Brutus. It's around 1,000 family and friends, primarily family, I guess, of players and coaching staff for both sides. I don't know. I think the exact breakdown, somewhere around 600 for Ohio State, 400 for visitors. And then, the press box will be a pretty much ghost town. I know that doesn't show up on TV, but that's just a reminder that, someone like me or you, we're not exempt from this situation. There's only going to be 40 members of the media in attendance, and all the press conferences will be on Zoom, and the sound will be obviously completely different. They had to put in rules for what kind of ambient sound and celebratory sound you can blast over the speakers. And Having been in the Horseshoe a couple of weeks ago for a practice where Ohio State was testing that out, it echoes because of the way the acoustics in that stadium, and it's a wild, weird scene, and I think it's going to take some getting used to for everybody. And I know that I think it stings, fans in the Big Ten to watch some of these other games elsewhere where there's, 20, 30,000 fans in the stadium. And Gene Smith thought that Ohio State was prepared, to get that many in the Horseshoe. But, the Big Ten is trying to level the playing field, and not every state is allowing fans to attend right now. So that's the situation we're going to be in. And that's, it's going to be strange on Saturday at noon.
Now, is there, and I don't know if you touched on it, I think you mentioned this, I'm not sure, I can't remember now, but is there something in the works of potentially seeing fans throughout the season? Is that being discussed behind closed doors right now? Is there something being worked out? The last I read on that was that, of course, Kevin Warren, commissioner of the Big Ten, it needed to be, a unanimous decision across the board. Every stadium needed to look the same, which is obviously difficult when you have a pandemic that's impacting the country differently in states across the country.
Yeah, I asked Gene Smith about that earlier this week, and that's when he mentioned the fact that they had a plan in place with pods, and given the size of the Horseshoe, where they felt get 20,000 people into the stadium comfortably. But the Big Ten is not allowing individual institutions to go on a case-by-case basis and do that. So as long as, I think the example he used was Wisconsin is not allowed, to have any fans, even including family or friends. So that's even not that's the only real exception when you look from campus to campus right now, is Ohio State and several others are allowing that. And I don't believe that, unless I was being misled there, that the Badgers could, have anyone at all in their stadium. So that's sort of the point is that, state and local guidelines in those areas are going to dictate what they can do. And until everyone has the ability to bring in more fans, then none of the schools will be able to.
Austin, what's in the water at Ohio State where players like Shaun Wade and Wyatt Davis, first-round picks, are coming back to college to play for free? What's in the water up there? What are they telling these guys?
Well, it's I know it's a cliche, and every school likes to talk about this, but clearly, the culture is different in Ohio State. And what makes it different? Well, you can see how much it meant to Shaun Wade and Wyatt Davis when they could have been, starting to collect some checks from agents and preparing for the draft instead of going through, today would be practice 41 for Ohio State without having played a game, since August, and with a little break in there, obviously. They could have missed all of that and the grind and dealing with daily testing and everything else, but the chance to compete at a high level, to get developed into a top draft pick, compete for championships, and knowing sort of what that means for your short-term career and your long-term legacy at a program where, that can change your life forever to be a national champion. You could just ask, somebody like Cardale Jones what that's meant for him, no matter what happened after he was done playing in Columbus in that 14th season. It changes people's lives. And I don't think that when you're talking about, Wade or Wyatt Davis or Josh Myers coming back last year, Justin Fields not even considering an opt-out, I could go through the list, but those guys wanted to wait and maximize and make sure they get every opportunity where they could play this year before moving on. And, the Wade and Davis cases certainly got more interesting because it seemed to be trending away from giving them an opportunity to play in the college football playoff, which is something that means so much to them. And they want to be around that brotherhood. And, I've been places where you hear that and you kind of laugh and roll your eyes. But, when you're around here, you can see it up close because there's a lot of visual evidence about just how much it means to them.
Now, obviously, Shaun Wade has one cornerback spot locked down. We've heard the names, Sevyn Banks, Cam Brown, Tariq Johnson. We know the names, but who has the game to have that other cornerback spot locked down?
Yeah, I think this will be a situation like Kerry Combs used to, roll through those three guys. I think you'll see a lot of Sevyn Banks and Cameron Brown. And I would bet that the snap count between those three guys, including Shaun Wade, will be pretty even, just the way that it once was, with guys like Garyon Conley and Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward. Banks and Cameron Brown have, only had a couple limited chances to really show what they can do. Cameron Brown, maybe more than Sevyn Banks last year, but those two guys are about to become fixtures on draft boards. They have all the athleticism, body type, technique, and then solid coaching that those guys that have come before have had. And I don't think that there will be any second guessing at all for Kerry Combs to put them on the field and rotate through on those outside spots. And then Marcus Williamson, looks like a guy that's is 4-star, just kind of waiting his time in the program, hadn't really connected for him, and then he's going to be out on the spot as sort of a fourth man out there. He could slide outside, but he's going to be in that slot, I think, primarily. So this this cornerback situation, it's insane to think about the run they've had with the draft picks, and it's locked up still now for 3 or 4 more years to go into the foreseeable future. Like it's truly remarkable, the level they've recruited and the way that they've developed that talent once it's arrived.
Austin Moore, Lettermen Row with us here on Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Austin, Justin Fields is a player that obviously, one of the top names in college football, not just Buckeye fans looking forward to seeing him. The world of college football can't wait to lay eyes on him as well coming up on Saturday. This has been an interesting offseason for him. He has stuck by Ohio State's side the entire time, and just that leadership right there is one reason why you could just tell this locker room is just, wrapped around him. What kind of year do you expect him to have outside of just saying a good one? What differences do you see in his game this year that, we should expect to see that, he's built on from what he did last year?
Well, I think that he had a Heisman winning, not just finalist worthy season last year. And you can't ever really say that it would surprise it for someone not to win the Heisman because it's such a difficult award to win and it only goes to one of them. And then his main competitions had a little bit of a statistical head start, but Justin Fields to me is the best player in college football, and I expect that he will prove that over the next 9 games. I think that he has a fantastic shot of winning the Heisman Trophy. I think that he can become the number 1 draft pick. When you're looking at his game, I think Ryan Day's never had this before, which is kind of hard to believe as well with a quarterback, starting for 2 years in his system and the familiarity that you get with the playbook. And, those two you're teaming up with the way they see the game and Fields with his athleticism and the weapons he has. It's just the sky's the limit. It would have been I wish that we could see exactly what he could have done in a full season with some stat padding games outside of the league knocked in to see what school records he could challenge. But I think that the part with that familiarity with the offense where he takes the next step, if there was one thing that he didn't do maybe at an elite level, still very good, was sometimes he would hold the football too long and maybe not get through as many reads as he could potentially get through now. I think that led to some of the sacks that he took last year that weren't necessarily on the fault of the offensive line. Again, that's nitpicking because he was just about everything you could possibly hope for at the quarterback spot last year. But that's probably an area where I would look at where you get smarter, you see things faster, you understand the concepts better, and then you take that and translate in with another year to develop physically, and some scary things can happen.
We can't talk about Justin Fields without talking about the weapons. What is this wide receiver rotation going to look like? Because, Olave, Wilson, the freshman, Fleming, Scott, we got an older guy in Jalen Harris. Like, there's a ton of weapons for him to throw the ball to. What is that rotation going to look like? Yeah,
pretty similar. I think Ohio State and Brian Hartline have gotten really, really pleased with the way that six-man group will work out. Ohio State's hoping that Cameron Babb can stay healthy. He just hasn't been able to do that, even dating back to high school with the knee injuries. But when he's been able to do his thing, people that have seen him play just rave about the athleticism and his knowledge of the game. So we'll see if he can crack into that mix. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is the one to really watch for those freshmen. All of them are going to play, and then Julian Fleming, we know just about the off-the-charts athleticism, the number one wide receiver recruit in the country. But look at what Jackson Smith and Jigba did, and I think you'll see him and Garrett Wilson both playing out of the slot, which is going to create so many problems for defensive coordinators. I don't know what you're going to do there, because you're going to leave Jamison Williams and Chris Olave in coverage out there on the outside, and then a safety or a nickel. God forbid a defense gets stuck with a linebacker trying to defend Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith and Jigba, because that will not end well for them. It's the way that Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson and Brian Hartline have amassed this talent and the creativity that they have with offensive game plans and creating mismatches, and then pairing that with Justin Fields. It's like it's a Death Star passing attack, man. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Austin, last thing, and we'll let you go, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. Obviously, Master Teague had the season started on time. We don't know what his role would have been early on in the season. If there's a silver lining to the season being pushed back, is that you're going to have him ready to go. I am curious your thoughts on, if Master Teague never got injured, would Ohio State have pushed as hard as they did to get Trey Sermon? And with that being said, is the silver lining that, hey, they were expecting to only have Trey Sermon be the featured back with Master Teague out, and now they have both of these guys healthy? I don't think that this staff anticipated both of these guys being healthy and ready to go when the season started. That is the case now. What was already a potent offense now has two dominant backs. I mean, this could be really interesting too as far as the run game is concerned.
Yeah, it's that position has been entertaining to watch, I guess, over the last 10 months. There's been a lot going on there. The potential for Trey Sermon to leave Oklahoma and come to Ohio State, that was a possibility and being talked about or whispered about before Master Teague was injured. I think that would have happened no matter what, but it did, to your point, you raised there, that enhanced the urgency, and I think that made Ohio State even more appealing than it already was to Trey Sermon when he was looking for that next spot. I think, look, Master Teague, with or without the injury, he's a man who had a lot to prove. Those last four games for him, and especially in the second half against Clemson when he had to go up there, I think it was 9 yards on 7 carries. And over the last 4 games when you expanded it, I think it was around 51 yards on 17 carries or so, something in that ballpark. He was not the same guy against the elite competition that he was earlier in the year. And that's fair. That doesn't mean that he had to be. It was just his second year in the program, and everybody develops at their own pace. But I think that was a wake-up call maybe for Master Teague about what it was going to take to get that next level and to do the things that J.K. Dobbins or Ezekiel Elliott or Carlos Hyde or whoever else had done for this Ohio State offense. He wasn't ready for that role yet. So, again, getting 6 or 7 extra weeks when you're coming off an Achilles tear is a big deal. I'm in the camp where it's wait and see, because that is such a difficult injury to have, especially at the position he plays. Can he go out there and make the cuts? Does he have the confidence? Is the speed there? Tuck Borland 2 years ago had this same injury, and he rushed back, and you could tell he was never fully back to the level that he wanted to be. So we'll see. He's a guy that I think just has a lot to prove in a lot of different ways.
Austin, answer this quick on your way out. If we saw Florida LSU have to push a game back, they have weeks to do that. If this happens to Ohio State, whether it's an outbreak on their roster or not, how's the Big Ten going to handle that?
Well, they need the college football playoff to help them out, because they didn't leave themselves any wiggle room. I think if more cancellations across the country pop up, the group that can help them most is the college football playoff, again, which that draws on all the leagues, and they don't seem to want to help each other after
yes, that's right.
Summer. But they're gonna need to. Like, if the SEC is starting to have problems like what you just talked about, the easiest way to give everyone a chance to play as many games as possible is to move the playoff back. You don't have to do it far, but 1 or 2 weeks would certainly help. I don't know what the likelihood of that actually happening is, Justin, but that would certainly help everybody.
All right, good stuff. Austin Ward, Lettermen Row, awesome enough to hang out with us here as we get set for Ohio